Hey guys, welcome back to Trekyards. As always, he's Commander Cockings.
And he's Captain Foley.
Ah,
Ha!
yeah, we're still us, and we're still coming at you with some cool Discovery talk.
Yes.
And yeah, what are we talking about today, Samuel?
Well, in one of our individual week breakdowns, we're asking the question, why is the Discovery using the old Discovery slash Shinjo slash even before Shinjo, where we saw in the Brightest Star, the at least 15, 20 years old uniforms? Why, given that we've seen the new uniforms, and we were told they were the new uniforms, and they went back to Earth, where the new uniforms would be. So I'm wondering, why is the crew still using as duty uniforms the 20 years old when they've already had a Earth trip? I mean, did you notice this? Because in episode 1 we knew they were probably swapping, but there's always hope. A new episode is a new reset, is a let's see what happens. But no? So what were your thoughts when you thought... I mean, I saw it in an article that's being brought up in the more like condensed version of why it doesn't make sense. I just wanted to bring up as a... It's just interesting.
I am at a loss because I did notice it. They mentioned they make a specific point of mentioning that they're the new uniforms in episode 1 of season 2. But then at the end of the episode, when he decides he's going to be in command of Discovery for a while Enterprise is getting fixed up, he changes to a Discovery uniform. And not just a Discovery uniform, but also the Discovery Delta with the split in it. He's still captain of the Enterprise. He's just temporarily on assignment on Discovery. So if anything, if he's going to wear a Discovery uniform for whatever reason, he should still have his Enterprise command Delta. Personally, that's what I think. I don't think it should all be switched over.
I mean, in his record, would it then say Captain of the Enterprise and Captain of the Discovery? If he's in temporary... Oh, it should.
Yeah.
Well, then he should probably have the Discovery one, because if he's taken full... like, you sort of assume if it's temp, you wouldn't need to change those things, but...
It's temporary command of Discovery. So it would still be in his service record as temporary command Discovery. But it's still the Enterprise is still his ship. The Enterprise is, I don't know. It's the nitpicky thing I noticed. I wish that would have been a nice thing to have everybody else wearing the Discovery Deltas and him having the Enterprise one as a nice kind of, okay, we screwed up the uniform idea, but at least we got this. Because there's no reason that Discovery should still be using those uniforms. None.
I can't think of any. And we know, and I'll reference specifically in Deep Space Nine, and this is a very... Again, the production reason is often the catalyst for the real reason. They swapped the I'll go call the references here before we jump back to Discovery. In the Next Generation, obviously they swap into the two-piece, the easier-to-wear uniforms in Season 3, but extras are still wearing the Season 1 uniforms because they already had them, might as well, easy. So therefore the crew has both uniforms. Okay, bit weird. In Deep Space Nine, this is the weirdest one. At the very last episode with the peace talks with the Dominion, they sign the charter, everyone's wearing the new, well, not even new First Contact style, but there's actually several people in the background that are wearing the classic TNG Season 3 version, which is now 2 uniforms ago. And so he's 7 years late with uniforms. So whoever that is a very strange service record to not swap. And by that time, you can just replicate, although we know that, well, in TOS, they imply you can't replicate uniforms because they talk about getting uniforms made with seamstress and quartermasters and so whereas they can in Discovery. It is as easy as 2 seconds. I mean, even in the future Discovery, they just make a new uniform two for the new character dude. Just like, here's a uniform. So to swap them out would take like 10 minutes. I mean, they do it for the Mirror Universe. Everyone gets the Mirror Universe uniforms. So it takes no effort of any kind. So why are they still using the ones that we know are at least 20-ish years old?
Now, some people are going to jump in and say, because Discovery is a science vessel, it's a different mission profile than the Enterprise, let's say, which is more exploration and whatever. I disagree with that. I mean, there are times in Star Trek where you see a ship show up, and they're all scientists or whatever wearing different uniforms, all matching on their own ship, but those are civilian scientists generally. They're not Starfleet, so there's no reason. And then the guy you mentioned in Deep Space Nine, I know why he was wearing that. It's because he was a temporal agent, and he
got
just
the date wrong.
Missed his mark, and he's standing there going, "I hope no one notices."
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that. But the problem with double down on that is that, okay, no, in season 1, the Europa is a fleet ship. They're wearing Discovery uniforms. It's not science specialist.
Yeah.
The Baran, we know, was wearing the right uniform. The Geronima, every time we saw a other ship, and they're not all science ships, are all wearing the Discovery era uniform, which we know is 20 years old. Now this brings the question: what do they mean by new?
But how do we know? How do we know it's 20 years old? Why don't you tell people why we know it's 20 years old?
Yeah, like I say, we saw. Now we didn't know it was 20 years old. We know it's at least 8. If you start from now in Discovery, it's at least 8, which is Burnham with a Shinjo. But in the Brightest Star, we saw Lieutenant Giorgio taking Saru from his planet, and she was wearing the same uniform, which now sets it back and then we know how long it takes to get captain, so at least another 5 to 10 years. I know there's the exact date, but it's going to be around that, and that sets it back, which is good. I kind of think to have it be an in between, like push it back as far as you need to. It's a fun in between, and we know things like the Wrath of Khan uniform stays for like 80 years. So there's certainly, there's 2 very one-tone color uniforms that both stay around for a while, and then alternates that go. That's fine, but you really need to ask the question. They say now, who is it that says new uniforms? Was it Pike that called out?
It was Pike, yes.
Right, so
because he said don't covet thy neighbor's starship to the engineer.
Yep.
And he says we got the shiny new uniforms though, and then Saru jumps in and says they're very bright, aren't they? That was the conversation.
So the question being, how long can you keep saying something's new? Where does that line of new? Like, if a film's been out in the cinema for 6 months, is it a new film?
If it's still in theaters, yes, it's still.
But it's not a new release anymore, is it? You know what I mean?
No. But if you buy a car, you say it's a new car for probably a year or 2.
Okay, that's a good example. That's an example. Or you buy clothes. If you buy jeans, if a year in, are they still your new jeans?
No, jeans probably are new for like a month.
Yeah, so that's obviously
everything's got gradients. Yeah.
So in the military, if you were getting a new uniform, and this is obviously to the military guys out there, I don't know how often you swap uniforms, but how long until it just be uniform?
I have no idea.
You'd probably say my old uniform, but you wouldn't necessarily refer to this as your new uniform.
Yeah, episode 1, when he said that, I kind of got the vibe that it's once they got back to Earth that they got the new uniforms. I mean, the cage and Menagerie, and even where No Man had gone before, clearly had a different style uniform. And then this seemed like the one that we saw in the production or all of TOS. Although that being said, Kirk in Where No Man Has Gone Before has a little bit bigger collar and stuff, a little bit different uniform. So I have no problem with the Cage era and the 5-year mission that they were on having like the more like sweater-like top. And then they got back to Earth just after the war. And by the way, guys, here's new uniforms for your crew. Thanks for not helping with the war, but
you did your job. We're good, guys. You stayed out there.
Yeah. But here's the new uniform. So that's the vibe that I got from that conversation. Like, well, we got the new uniforms. They might have a fancier starship, but we got a new uniform. So I would assume pretty new.
Okay, I have a half counter to that, but if Cage still is relevant, then that's an interesting counter. So now they released a couple of books for season 1, and they were meant to be licensed, official, canon, linked in the story. They specifically were being called out like, this is the first novel. It tells the story. It's it was very much this is canon. This is an important deal. Otherwise, it was the first meeting of Burnham and Spock in the book. Like, if you're retconning that already, then the author who was told this would be, was carefully written to be the first canon book is like, oh, crossed out. It's like, what a...
Dayton Ward, I believe, is the author.
I mean, what's the point? I mean, obviously he got his payday and who cares, but he's a Trek fan and he does care. Now, in that, they specifically have multiple references where they say, well, they see the Enterprise. The Shinjo sees the Enterprise. I don't remember how many years earlier, but I think 3 or 4. So it's a couple of, a good chunk of time. And the Enterprise is both close enough, so it's not on its 5-year mission, but it is Pike. And they do specifically call out the more colourful uniforms. Now, that description could apply then to either of these new ones, but they do have some form of newer uniform that are only rolled out on the colonies at this point. That was a specific point. So that could be the Cage versions, but then the Shinjo team should be wearing Cage uniforms if there's that... Why would they skip an entire uniform generation if 6 years of that uniform and only 12 ships get them, all of which are out of So you tell me all the admirals say, yeah, we're just going to stick with our uniforms that are 35 years old. Only 12 crews get the new ones, and then we didn't like them, so even though they came back to Earth, we just
That being said, in TOS, in Charlie X, you got the regular uniforms on Enterprise. Then they come across the freighter that's carrying Charlie. I forget its name now. It was just on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, when they beam when the captain and first officer beam over, they were wearing the older cage style uniforms with no black collar. They're still Starfleet, but yeah, it's like they're a step behind as far as uniforms go because it's a smaller vessel. I don't know the reason, but just because production reason, because they had the uniforms,
you might as well.
They just threw them on, right?
Yeah,
and to look different. So that's worth pointing out there. I think that certain ships do have different.
But when now in Discovery it's shown that you can create these uniforms instantly, there should be. I mean, there's got to be a reason. There's no limitations. There's a reason for non-uniform uniforms. And part of the uniform is that everyone has a cohesive structure. Everyone seems to have.
That's why it's uniform across the board.
We broke it down and it makes sense. And so all the ships and all the admirals, and it can. Although that said, I was about to say all the admirals back on Earth at the last episode, season 1, have the old uniform. But guess what? Some people are wearing the Cage-ish uniform. We can see them in the background. Now, could that be Enterprise crew? And when they came back with a Cage... Again, we know the reason for that is that Brian Fuller, the first uniform, was a Cage-ish updated uniform. And then he was let go. The production team said, no, we want to do our own thing. They redesigned it to be something uniquely different. But they had the entire cast's worth of Cage-ish uniforms, and they didn't use them at any point in the show. And then they used their new... It was completely, let's just make something new. That's why it sort of is its own thing without really... It sort of connects, it's blue, but that's really it. Cage had been thought through. It's kind of like the communicator and tricorder had thought through. Not so much. And then they reuse them as background extra because we've got them. But that makes them now canon. They're out of focus, but they're there. So does that imply that now the newest uniforms are the newest ones? And then you're right, those are days old. And the Connie ones were still the Connie. That's the old uniforms were still the Cage uniforms that they brought in, but that they decided not to implement those, which is okay. Maybe they just thought they weren't as smart. Also, no pockets, but it doesn't answer the question of why they were at Earth. They were going to Vulcan to pick up a new captain for their new mission. They're not following up something. They're doing something new. So obviously, you would say, "Great, well done, guys. Here's the new patterns. Everyone update the whole. We're post-war. We don't have the time to go on new uniforms. Let's just do that." That obviously is what makes sense. So it seems do you guys know any reason? I mean, obviously they had the uniforms. Why is the budget? But that doesn't make sense, and you need it to make sense. Otherwise, it breaks this suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, and the fact, and what started all this with the fact that Pike went from his new uniform to the Discovery one because he's serving on Discovery. I don't know what to say. It doesn't make sense within its own narrative.
I guess
they're not going to explain it either, unfortunately.
No, they don't care. I guess, no, I'm not a military person, so I don't know, but it's like if you had two aircraft carriers, they both came back, the new one sent out, and the captain was wearing a new uniform, and the old aircraft carrier that was back in dock for a week, they had stocks of new uniforms, they went out with the 40-year-old uniforms that have already been decommissioned, and the new captain walks on with his new uniform and is like, oh, well, I guess no one wants to wear this uniform, so I'm going to put on the 40-year-old one I've been wearing since I was a cadet. Even though I love this new uniform that's sparkling and it's got all these... It's like, no, I think you'd order them to go back to port and restock. I mean, you've got... they're right there, guys. We just pick them up. Like, no, we're already going, but I've got them. I've got the patterns. It's right here. It's like... So, it's not a small thing, but that would have been a really great step for the visual team to push the show one step further. To be in their TOS alternates.
Or that being said, having a few people on Discovery wearing the new uniforms and doing like the generations thing where they were in transition between the new uniforms and the old uniforms. Kind of the people that were still on duty were wearing the old uniforms, and people coming on their new shift have the new uniforms. that I kind of like that about Generations, that blend of the uniforms for a day or two, where it's like everybody's getting into the routine. Or even just have some Enterprise people aboard Discovery wearing the new uniforms.
Yeah,
because like we talked about earlier, Pike would probably bring over a few key personnel from the Enterprise while it's in dry dock to help him. That people that he's worked with for 5 years and knows them. So that would be kind of a nice nod as well. Just seeing the odd person in one of the colored uniforms. That'd be nice, but we don't get that even. So I don't know why, man. I don't know. I don't know.
We just wanted to bring it up because we're looking at small things, and we love thought being put in. We love explanations, and Discovery currently is doing more explanations. They're giving more thought. So when we see those classic season 1 slight problems, we're like, okay, well, still some problems, but we'll just bring it up and talk about it briefly with you guys.
Yeah. So if any of you guys know, if you serve in the military, if there's a reason for this, if it's something that's has historical significance, let us know in the comments down below. We would love to learn if there is a reason for it, but if not, I'd also like to hear your thoughts on that as well. So put a comment down below. As always, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the notification icon, and check out all of our links. A lot of cool Trekyards swag on the Teespring store, and a bunch of other cool stuff you can get down there. So check those out.
Yeah, and support us on Patreon. It helps us super much every month, or just like an occasional month. I mean, just for one week, for 1 month, whatever. Or help us out on trekyards.com. Click the donate button, give a little bit. That always helps. Join our lives every single week, including our after episode reviews on Fridays, which are always big and a lot of fun to dissect the new episode of Discovery, and our more chilled ones during the week, and just share. Because we do this stuff for you guys, so share and we can do more.
Yeah, and all that support helps us get new uniforms, which we'll never wear.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
All right, guys. So until next time, I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Commander Coffins.
Bye, guys.